Scene 2 of Act 2. Act 2, Scene 2. It is now several hours later. A silent, dozing quiet has settled over the synagogue. Indeed, the Kabbalist has dozed off over a thick tome at the upstage desk on the far side of the altar, his shawl-enshrouded head lying on his book. The girl, too, is napping, curled up in the worn leather armchair in the rabbi's office. The sexton is sitting like a cobbler on a chair stage left. Alper and Zatorsky sit drowsily on two wooden chairs center stage. Only Arthur moves restlessly around the synagogue. He looks into the rabbi's office, checking on the girl, studies her sleeping sweetness, somehow deeply troubled. All is still, all is quiet. In the synagogue, the Kabbalist awakens suddenly and sits bolt upright, as if he has just had the most bizarre dream. He stares wide-eyed at the wall in front of him. He rises and moves slowly downstage, his face a study in quiet awe. Apparently, he has had a profoundly moving dream, and he puts his hand to his brow as if to keep his thoughts from tumbling out. An expression of exultation spreads across his wan-lined, bearded old face. His eyes are wide with terror. The Kabbalist, whispering in awe, "Blessed be the Lord, blessed be the Lord, blessed be the Lord." He stands now almost at the footlights, staring out over the audience, his face illuminated with ecstasy. He cries out, "Praise ye the Lord, hallelujah! Praise ye the Lord, hallelujah! It is good to sing praises unto our God, for it is pleasant and praise is seemly. Praise ye the Lord, hallelujah!" Alper has watched the Kabbalist with drowsy interest. The Kabbalist turns and stares at him. The Kabbalist. "My dear friends, my dear, dear friends." Tears fill his old eyes, and his mouth works without saying anything for a moment. Alper. "Are you all right, Hirschman?" The Kabbalist, awed by an inner wonder. "I was studying the codification of the law, especially those paragraphs beginning with the letters of my father's name, because today is my father's day of memorial. I have brought some honey cake here in my father's memory. I have it somewhere in a paper bag. Where did I put it? I brought it here last night. It is somewhere around, and as I studied, I dozed off and my head fell upon the book of Mishnah. Oh, my dear friends, I have prayed to the Lord to send me a dream, and he has sent me a dream. I dreamt that I was bathing in a pool of the clearest mountain water, and a man of great posture appeared on the bank, and he said to me, 'Rabbi, give me your blessing, for I go to make a journey.' And I looked closely on the man, and it was the face of my father. And I said unto him, 'My father, why do you call me Rabbi? For did I not lustfully throw away the white fringed shawl of the rabbinate? And did I not mock the Lord to thy face? And have I not spent my life in prayer and penitence, so that I might cleanse my soul?' And my father smiled upon me, and his bearded face glowed with gentleness. And he said unto me, 'Rise from your bath, my son, and put upon you these robes of white linen which I have arrayed for you. For thy soul is cleansed, and thou hast found a seat among the righteous. and the countenance of the Lord doth smile upon thee this day. So rise and rejoice and dance in the holy place, for thine is eternal peace, and thou art among the righteous. Thus was the dream that I dreamt as my head lay on the book of Mishnah. He lifts his head and stares upward. The Lord shall reign forever. Thy God, O Zion, unto all generations. Praise ye the Lord, hallelujah. He stares distractedly around him. Where is the wine, sexton? The wine. There was a festival on Friday. I have been given a seat among the righteous. For this day have I lived and fasted. I have been absolved. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. The cakes. Here. Good. He is beginning to laugh. I shall dance before the holy ark. Sexton, sexton, distribute the macaroons, that all may share this exalted day. The Lord hath sent me a sign, and the face of my father smiled upon me. As abruptly as he had begun to laugh, he begins to sob in the effusion of his joy. He sinks onto a chair and cries unashamedly, Alper, my dear Hirschman, how delighted we are for you. The sexton, offering some honey cake to Zatorsky. You want some cake there, Zatorsky? Zatorsky. I'll have a little wine, too, as long as we're having a party. The sexton scurries off to the lectern, the bottom of which is a cabinet containing various sacramental things and wine. Arthur, who has been watching all this, rather taken by it. What happened? Alper. Mr. Hirschman has received a sign from God. His father has forgiven him, and his soul has been cleansed. Arthur. It's wonderful. Zatorsky, to the sexton, now pouring wine from a decanter. I'll tell you, Blair, if you have a little whiskey, I prefer that. Wine makes me dizzy. The sexton. Where would I get whiskey? This is a synagogue, not a saloon. Zatorsky, taking his glass of wine. Happiness, Hirschman. Alper. Some wine for our young friend here. To Arthur. Will you join Mr. Hirschman in his moment of exaltation? Arthur. Yes, of course. The sexton, who is pouring the wine and sipping a glass of his own as he pours, has begun to hum a gay, Hasidic tune. He hands Arthur his glass. Zatorsky, handing his glass back for a refill. Oh, will Schlissel eat his heart out when he finds out he is missing a party? Alper, making a toast. Rabbi Israel, son of Isaac, I think it is fitting we use your rabbinical title. We bow in reverence to you. The Kabbalist, deeply touched. My dear, dear friends, I cannot describe to you my happiness. Zatorsky. There hasn't been a party here since that boy's confirmation last month. Wasn't that a skimpy feast for a confirmation? Another glass, please, sexton. Oh, I'm beginning to sweat. Some confirmation party that was. The boy's father does a nice business in real estate, and all he brings down is a few pieces of sponge cake and 1 bottle of whiskey. 1 bottle of whiskey for 50 people? As much whiskey as I had couldn't even cure a toothache. Oh boy, am I getting dizzy. When I was a boy, I could drink a whole jar of potato cider. You remember that potato cider we used to have in Europe? It could kill a horse. Oh boy, what kind of wine is that? My legs are like rubber already. Zatorsky suddenly stamps his foot and executes a few brief Hasidic dance steps. Alper, that is not a bad wine, you know. A pleasant bouquet. Zatorsky, wavering over to Arthur. Have a piece of cake, young man. What does it say in the Bible? Go eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a happy mind? Give the boy another glass. Arthur, smiling. Thank you, I'm still working on this one. Kabbalist suddenly raises his head and bursts into a gay Hasidic chant. The Kabbalist bursting into song. Light is sown, sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright in heart. Oh, light is sown, sown for the righteous, Zatorsky gaily joining in, and joy for the upright, the upright in the heart. Oh, Kabbalist and Zatorsky take each other's shoulders and begin to dance in the formless Hasidic pattern. They are in wonderful spirits. Light is sown, sown for the righteous. The sexton and Alper join in, clapping their hands and eventually joining the dance so that the four old Jews form a small ring, their arms around each other's shoulders, their old feet kicking exuberantly as they stamp about in a sort of circular pattern. All. And joy for the upright in heart. Oh, light is sown, sown for the righteous, and the joy for the upright in heart. Round and round they stomp and shuffle, singing out lustily, sweat forming in beads on their brows. The words are repeated over and over again until they denigrate, from the shortness of breath of the singers into a bee boo boo bee 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 bee. Arthur watches. Finally, Alper, gasping for breath, breaks out of the ring and staggers to a chair. The Kabbalist. A good 60 years I haven't danced. Oh, enough. My heart feels as if it will explode. He staggers, laughing from the small ring of dancers, and sits down, gasping for air. Alper. Some more wine, Hirschman? The Kabbalist, gasping happily. Oh! Zatorsky looks up, noticing the girl, who, awakened by the romping, has sidled out into the synagogue and has been watching the gaiety with delight. Zatorsky eyes her wickedly for a moment, then advances on her, his arms outstretched, quite the old cock of the walk. Zatorsky. Bee, 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 bee. He seizes her in his arms and begins to twirl around, much to her delight. She dances with him, her skirts whirling and her feet twinkling, laughing at the sheer physical excitement of it all. Zatorsky supplies the music, a gay chant, the lyrics of which consist of bee, 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 bee. The Kabbalist. The last time I danced was on the occasion of the last day of the Holiday of Tabernacles in 1896. I was 17 years old. A sudden frightened frown sweeps across his face. He mutters, "Take heed for the girl, for the Dybbuk will be upon her soon." Alper, leaning to him. "What did you say? Israel, son of Isaac?" The Kabbalist turns to the girl dancing with Zatorsky and stares at her. The Kabbalist. "Let the girl rest, Zatorsky, for she struggles with the Dybbuk. Behold." The girl has indeed broken away from Zatorsky and has begun an improvised dance of her own. The gaiety is gone from her face and is replaced by a sullen lasciviousness. The dance she does is a patently provocative one. She dances slowly at first, and then, with increasing abandon and wantonness. Zatorsky recoils in horror. The girl begins to stamp her feet and to whirl more and more wildly. Her eyes grow bold and flashing, and she begins to shout old gypsy words, a mongrel Russian, oriental in intonation. The Kabbalist now slowly moves to the girl, who, when she becomes aware of his coming close, abruptly stops her dance and stands stock still, her face a mask of extravagant pain. The Kabbalist regards her gently. Kabbalist. "Lie down, my child, and rest." At this quiet suggestion, the girl begins to sway as if she is about to faint. The girl. "I feel so faint. So faint. She sinks slowly to the floor, not quite in a swoon, but on the verge. Arthur races to her side. Arthur, do we have any water here? Alper, wine would be better. Sexton, give her some wine. The sexton hurries with someone's glass. Arthur, holding the girl's head. Is she a sickly girl? Alper, bending over them. She was never sick a day in her life. The sexton. Here's the wine. Zatorsky to the sexton. Did I tell you? Did I tell you? The girl. I feel so faint. I feel so faint. Arthur, bringing the glass of wine to her lips. Sip some of this. The girl murmuring. Save me, save me. The Kabbalist. The Dybbuk weakens her. I have seen this once before. The sexton, to Zatorsky. When you told me about this, Dybbuk, I didn't believe you. Zatorsky. So did I tell you right? The sexton. Oh boy. Arthur. Help me get her onto the chair in there. Alper. Yes, of course. The sexton. Here, let me help a little. Between them, they manage to get the girl up and walk her slowly to the rabbi's office, where they gently help her lie down on the leather sofa. The Kabbalist, to Zatorsky. They haven't heard from Mr. Foreman yet? Zatorsky. No, we're waiting. The Kabbalist, frowning. It is not that far to Williamsburg. Well, the girl will sleep now. He walks slowly to the door of the rabbi's office, followed by a wary Zatorsky. Alper returns to the synagogue proper to join the other old men, and for the briefest of moments Arthur finds himself alone with the girl, holding her head gently in his arms. Suddenly he kisses her brow and lightly strokes her hair. He rises quickly as the others return. Arthur, I think she's fallen asleep. Alper, thank heavens for that. Arthur, look, I'm going to call her family. She may be quite ill. I think we'd all feel a lot better if she were in the hands of a doctor. If one of you will please give me her home phone number, just a little annoyed for nobody answers him. Please, gentlemen, I really don't think it's wise to pursue this nonsense any longer. The Kabbalist. It is not nonsense. I do not speak of Dybbuks casually. As a young man, I saw hundreds of people come to my father claiming to be possessed. But of all these, only 2 were true Dybbuks. Of these 2, one was a girl very much like this poor girl. And even before the black candles and the ram's horn could be brought for the exorcism, she sank down onto the earth and died. I tell you, this girl is possessed, and she will die, clutching at her throat and screaming for redemption unless this Dybbuk is exorcised. He stares at the others and nods his head. She will die. Wake the girl. I will take her to Korpach Knicker myself. Alper. Zatorsky, wake the girl. I will get her coat. Sexton, call a taxicab for Rabbi Israel. Alper, who had been reaching for the girl's coat, is stayed by Arthur. He looks up at the young man. Young man, what are you doing? Arthur. Mr. Alper, the girl is sick. There may be something seriously wrong with her. Alper. Young man, Rabbi Israel says she is dying. Arthur. Well, in that case, certainly. Let me have her home telephone number. Alper. Striding into the rabbi's office. You are presuming in matters that are no concern of yours. Arthur, following. They are as much my concern as they are yours. I have grown quite fond of this girl. I want her returned to the proper authorities right now. If necessary, I shall call a policeman. Now let's have no more nonsense. Alper sinks down behind the desk, glowering. A moment of silence fills the room. Then the Kabbalist, who has been standing in the rear of the office and watching with quiet interest, says, The Kabbalist. The young man doesn't believe in Dybbuk's? Arthur, I'm afraid not. I think you are all behaving like madmen. The Kabbalist considers this answer for a moment. The Kabbalist. I will tell you an old Chasidic parable. A deaf man passed by a house in which a wedding party was going on. He looked in the window and saw all the people there dancing and cavorting, leaping about and laughing. However, since the man was deaf and could not hear the music of the fiddlers, he said to himself, Ah, this must be a madhouse. Young man, because you are deaf, must it follow that we are lunatics? Arthur, you are quite right. I did not mean to mock your beliefs, and I apologize for it. However, I am going to call the girl's father, and if he wants to have the girl exorcised, that's his business. He sits down behind the desk, puts his hand on the receiver, and looks up at Alper. Well? The Kabbalist. Give him the number, Mr. Alper. Alper fishes an old address book out of his vest pocket, thumbs through the pages, and hands the open book to Arthur, who begins to dial. There is no one home in the girl's house. Her father, who wishes only to forget about the girl, has gone to his shop in the city, and at this moment is overeating at his lunch in a dairy restaurant. The stepmother has taken the younger children to her sister's. The girl's doctor has called the police and has gone about his rounds, and the police are diffidently riding up and down the streets of the community looking for an old Jew and his granddaughter. Arthur says nothing, but simply waits for an answer to his ring. The Kabbalist sits down on the arm of the couch to contemplate. At last, he says, I cannot understand why this young man does not believe in Dybbuk's. Alper. It is symptomatic of the current generation, Rabbi Israel, to be utterly disillusioned. Historically speaking, an era of prosperity following an era of hard times usually produces a number of despairing and quietistic philosophies. For the now prosperous people have found out they are just as unhappy as when they were poor. Thus, when an intelligent man of such a generation discovers that 2 television sets have no more meaning than one, or that he gets along no better with his wife in a suburban house than he did in their small city flat, he arrives at the natural assumption that life is utterly meaningless. The Kabbalist. What an unhappy state of affairs. Arthur returns the receiver to its cradle. Arthur, muttering. Nobody home. The Kabbalist to Arthur. Is that true, young man, that you believe in absolutely nothing? Arthur. Not a damn thing. The Kabbalist. There is no truth, no beauty, no infinity, no known, no unknown. Arthur. Precisely. The Kabbalist. Young man, you are a fool. Arthur. Really? I have been reading your book, the Book of Zohar. I am sure it has lost much in the translation, but sir, any disciple of this abracadabra is presuming when he calls anyone else a fool. Arthur produces from his jacket the book the girl gave him and extends it to the Kabbalist, who accepts it frowning. The Kabbalist. You have been reading the Book of Zohar. Dear young man, one does not read the Book of Zohar, leaf through its pages, and make marginal notes. I have entombed myself in this slim volume for 60 years, raw with vulnerability to its hidden mysteries, and have sensed only a glimpse of its passion. Behind every letter of every word lies a locked image, and behind every image a sparkle of light of the ineffable brilliance of infinity. But the concept of the inexpressible unknown is inconceivable to you. For you are a man possessed by the tangible. If you cannot touch it with your fingers, it simply does not exist. Indeed, that will be the epithet of your generation, that you took everything for granted and believed in nothing. It is a very little piece of life that we know. How shall I say it? I suggest it is wiser to believe in Dybbuk's than in nothing at all. Arthur. Mr. Hirschman, a good psychiatrist, even a poor one, could strip your beliefs in 10 minutes. You may think of yourself as a man with a god, but I see you as a man obsessed with guilt who has invented a god so he can be forgiven. You have invented it all. The guilt, God, forgiveness, the whole world, Dybbuk's, love, passion, fulfillment. The whole fantastic mess of pottage. Because it is unbearable for you to bear the pain of insignificance. None of these things exist. You've made them all up. The fact is, I have half a mind to let you go through with this exorcism. For after all the trumpetings of ram's horns and the bellowing of incantations, and after the girl falls in a swoon on the floor, I assure you, she will rise up again as demented as she ever was. And I wonder what bizarre rationale and mystique you will expound to explain all that. Now, if the disputation is at an end, I am going to call the police. He picks up the receiver again and dials the operator. Alper. Well, what can one say to such bitterness? The Kabbalist shrugs. One can only say that the young man has very little regard for psychiatrists. The front door to the synagogue bursts open, and Foreman and Schlissel come hurtling in, breathing heavily and in a state of absolute confusion. Alper darts out into the synagogue proper and stares at them. Schlissel. Oh, thank God, the synagogue is still here. Alper. Well? Schlissel. He can hardly talk. He is so out of breath. Well, what? Alper. What did the Korpachnicker say? Schlissel. Who knows? Who saw the Korpachnicker? We've been riding in subways for 4 hours. Back and forth, in this train, in that train. I am convinced there is no such place as Williamsburg, and there is no such person as the Korpachnicker rabbi. I tell you, twice we got off at 2 different stations just to see daylight. And as God is my witness, both times we were in New Jersey. Foreman. Oh, I tell you, I am sick from driving so much. Alper. Idiot, you didn't take the Brighton train. Schlissel. We took the Brighton. He waves both arms in a gesture of final frustration. We took all the trains. I haven't had a bite to eat all morning. Don't tell me about Brighton trains. Don't tell me about anything. Leave me alone, and the devil take your whole capitalist economy. Zatorsky, the sexton, and the Kabbalist have all come out to see what the noise is all about. Even Arthur is standing in the office doorway listening to all this. Schlissel. We asked this person. We asked that person. This person said that train. That person said this train. We went to a policeman. He puts us on a train. The conductor comes in and says, last stop. We get out. As God is my witness, New Jersey. We get back on that train. The conductor says, get off next station and take the other train. We get off the next station and take the other train. A man says, last stop. We get out. New Jersey. In the rabbi's office, the girl suddenly sits bolt upright, her eyes clenched tight in pain, screaming terribly, her voice shrill with anguish. Foreman racing to her side. Oh my God, Evelyn. Oh my God. Evelyn. Evelyn, what is it? The girl clutches at her throat and screams. The girl. Save me, save me, save me. Satorsky and the sexton begin to mutter rapid prayers under their breath. Alper, putting his arm around Foreman. David, she's very ill. We think she may be dying. Arthur has raced to the girl. He sits on the couch beside her and takes her in his arms. Arthur, call a doctor. Foreman, in a panic to Alper. He says I should call a doctor. Arthur puts his hand to his brow and shakes his head as if to clear it out of shock and confusion. Alper, crossing to the Kabbalist. Save her, Rabbi Israel. You have had your sign from God. You are among the righteous. Arthur turns slowly and regards the silent, betallied form of the little Kabbalist. Arthur, to the Kabbalist, his voice cracking under emotions he was unaware he still had. For God's sakes, perform your exorcism or whatever has to be done. I think she's dying. The Kabbalist regards Arthur for a moment with the profoundest gentleness. Then he turns, and with an authoritative voice instructs the sexton. The Kabbalist. Sexton, we shall need black candles, the ram's horn, prayer shawls of white wool, and there shall be 10 Jews for a quorum to witness before God this awesome ceremony. The sexton. Just plain black candles? The Kabbalist. Just plain black candles. The sexton is already hurrying into his coat. Alper moves quietly up to Foreman standing in the office doorway and touches his old friend's shoulder in a gesture of awe and compassion. Foreman, at the touch, begins to cry and buries his shaking old head on his friend's shoulder. Alper embraces him. Zatorsky, in the synagogue to Schlissel. I am absolutely shaking. Arthur, having somewhat recovered his self-control, sinks down behind the desk, frowning, confused by all that is going on and moved by a complex of feeling he cannot understand at all. The curtain falls.